viewers, and welcome to a powerful moment of truth and solidarity. In today's video, South African Minister Naledi receives a standing ovation for her uncompromising stance on Palestine. With courage and conviction, she calls out the international community for its hypocrisy and inaction in the face of Israeli atrocities. She demands justice and accountability, citing the International Criminal Court's jurisdiction over the situation in Palestine. Minister Pandor also draws parallels with South Africa's own struggle against apartheid, highlighting the long-standing relationship between the people of Palestine and the anti-apartheid movement. Now, in this speech, Minister Pandor sheds light on the double standards of the international community, pointing out the swift action taken against Putin compared to the inaction on Netanyahu and his ministers. Now, she also critiques the silencing of media outlets like Al Jazeera and the criminalization of peaceful protests in the UK. So with that said, join me as you listen to her powerful speech. I will be right back.
The International Criminal Court has jurisdiction over the situation in Palestine, and we have previously called on the Office of the Prosecutor to urgently lead a thorough and impartial investigation into this matter, one that complies with international legal standards, to establish the facts and bring those responsible to justice. It is the collective duty of the international community to ensure that atrocities of this nature are duly prosecuted in terms of the Rome Statute and the Geneva Conventions. If all of this were happening in Africa, they would have already issued warrants. It took 3 weeks to issue warrants on Putin, 7 months, nothing on Prime Minister Netanyahu and his ministers. Of course, you'd have seen in reports today that the prosecutor of the ICC has received, like me, a letter from congressmen who have indicated that if you dare to issue a warrant, we will deal with you. Same letter I have received. Just imagine if South Africa were to ban the SABC. The whole media world would be on us. But what are they saying today about what Israel has done to Al Jazeera? Israel has made it a crime to express any empathy and support for Palestinians. And you also know that due to a range of very successful protests in the United Kingdom, the government there decided to add a new twist to the definition of terrorism, which meant essentially democratic, peaceful protests now become a terrorist act. Me to begin, before I begin the lecture, I just want to make it clear, as I've tried to do in many settings, that South Africa's relationship with the Palestinian cause and the people of Palestine did not begin on the 8th of October. It's a long-established relationship because the people of Palestine were fully part of the international solidarity campaign against apartheid. Some of you who are young may not know that a strong element of the 5 key attributes that form the core of the liberation struggle, that one of those important elements was international solidarity. Our leaders, such as O.R. Tambo and many others, went all over the world educating about apartheid, educating about racism and discrimination, educating about colonialism of a special type, and saying to the world, you have a moral obligation to support us in our struggle for freedom. We wish you to become part of a global movement against apartheid. And that movement would become the international anti-apartheid movement. And comrades and friends in Palestine that were spoken to at the time, even though they were suffering huge oppression themselves, they said, South Africa, we understand, we will join you in the struggle. Whatever way we can support you, we will. So it's a long established relationship. It doesn't begin on 8th October, nor has it got anything to do with the elections, although I'll be voting ANC. But anyway, it doesn't have anything to do with the elections. It's a long established relationship that we have, and we have it with many in the world. I've just been in Copenhagen in Denmark, and I had a round table with all the activists who were in the international anti-apartheid movement. I met an 82-year-old who had occupied the consulate of South Africa in Copenhagen in those days in the 1970s. And they stayed there and prevented consular services from being rendered by the apartheid state, and made all those officials extremely uncomfortable by occupying that building. And there are legions of such stories. I met artists against apartheid who painted all buildings associated with the apartheid state and marked them as racist for all the world to see. So it's vital that we as South Africans have a full appreciation, both of our imprint in terms of developing critical concepts for political activism, but also an appreciation of how the world stood with us. People ask me sometimes, how come South Africa is doing more than other Arab countries? And my answer is, I don't know. Because my experience is once the OAU decided to help us in our fight against apartheid, almost all African countries joined and acted in accordance with the decision of the Organization of African Unity. There were a few, irrelevant little ones who didn't quite follow, but the majority were part of the movement against apartheid. So with us, Africans were solid. And we hope that the Palestinian people will enjoy a similar solidarity. So now let me get to my lecture. Allow me to begin by recognizing the coordinator of this important program of the memorial lecture, Professor Salim Bali. He's a really radical person, a revolutionary, and I must say, I feel the fact that he invited me, maybe he thinks I've got a bit of revolutionary in myself too. Professor Bali, and then Professor Camilla Naidu, the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, and my great comrade and mentor, former Minister Ronnie Kasrils. Thank you for that very kind introduction. And yes, it's true, I was going to recognize our Director General, whose birthday it is today. Unfortunately, there's a very important meeting I was supposed to attend, and my only substitute can be the Director General. So I would have asked him to come and present this lecture, but I wanted to be here, so he had to go to that meeting for me. Then I wish to recognize Professor Samia Botme, the Dean of Economics of Besaid University, and all colleagues from Besaid University who join us today. I wish to recognize Advocate Diana Butu, our distinguished comrades from Gaza who are with us today, and all our comrades from Palestine who join us, and those from all over the international community who have taken an interest in this important subject. And of course, you, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and I suppose my husband, Sharif. So nice to be with you for once. It's a real honor for me to address you today at this, the second Shireen Abu Akleh Memorial Lecture. To my mind, this lecture occurs against a troubling backdrop of evident decline in media freedom, with suggestions of complicity by practitioners that were previously ardent fighters for free media and expression. Just imagine if South Africa were to ban the SABC. The whole media world would be on us. But what are they saying today about what Israel has done to Al Jazeera? It is vital, I believe, that academics and academic institutions devote more time to this decline in freedom of expression and to the growing threat to it. The decline began well before the advent of embedded journalists, but it has lately snowballed, and we need to be very worried about this development. In the past, journalists broadly knew they would enjoy robust and active protection from fearless colleagues and the public who would risk their lives to protect them. I believe the decline we are witnessing today cannot simply be explained away by citing the existence of wireless technology, social media, or other technologies. There's a bigger threat underway, and we need to pay more attention to it. This week, the world marks 2 years since the assassination of Shireen Abu Akleh, the beloved veteran journalist who dedicated her life to the pursuit of justice and truth. To date, no one has been held accountable for her death, despite the initial global outrage, and there has been no reported progress in the investigation at the International Criminal Court, and silence with regards to any other investigations. The UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory concluded on reasonable grounds that Israeli forces used lethal force without justification under international human rights law when they shot and killed Shireen in the occupied West Bank, and thus violating her right to life. The situation for journalists in the occupied Palestinian territories has become increasingly grave over the past 7 months. They are marooned and abandoned by their colleagues, even as the world annually celebrates World Press Freedom Day. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, as of April 23rd this year, at least 97 journalists and media workers have been killed in Gaza since 7th October. The targeting of journalists in the occupied territories is part of a pattern of silencing the free press and is an outright contravention of international law. International human rights law obligates an occupying power to allow for freedom of expression and protests. The ability of journalists to cover events as they take place is essential, and efforts to intimidate and assassinate members of the media should not be allowed to continue with impunity. I wonder of us gathered here, how many know the names of the 97 who have been murdered? If Shireen were alive today, she would have been in the trenches in Gaza, reporting day and night on the atrocities taking place, in the hope that the world would take notice and show their solidarity with the Palestinian people. She would have been devastated by the wholesale destruction of civilian life in Gaza and the unfathomable global intolerance of the unending suffering of the Palestinian people, many of whom have died agonizing deaths trapped under the rubble. She would have been reporting on the immense suffering of survivors in Gaza who are now battling unprecedented hunger and starvation, as well as continuous military assaults by the occupying forces. Regrettably, despite the ruling by the highest court of the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, the Israeli state has continued its murderous assault on the people of Gaza with impunity, killing more civilians, maiming thousands of others, continuing the bombing of homes and other buildings and infrastructure, affecting every possible avenue of life of the residents of Gaza. This includes hospitals, ambulances, hundreds of schools, all universities in Gaza, cultural and religious institutions, and much more. The vast majority of the dead and injured are women and children. According to the report by the UN Human Rights Office on 18 April this year, United Nations experts have expressed grave concern over the pattern of attacks on schools, on universities, teachers, and students in the Gaza Strip, raising serious alarm over the systemic destruction of the Palestinian education system. The report states that with more than 80% of schools in Gaza damaged or destroyed, it may be reasonable to ask if there's an intentional effort to comprehensively destroy the Palestinian education system, an action known as scholasticide. The term refers to the systemic obliteration of education through the arrest, detention, or killing of teachers, students, and staff, and the destruction of educational infrastructure, as earlier speakers indicated today. After 6 months of military assault, more than 5,479 students, 261 teachers, 95 university professors have been killed in Gaza, and over 7,819 students and 756 teachers have been injured, with numbers growing every day. At least 60% of educational facilities, including 13 public libraries, have been damaged or destroyed, and at least 625,000 primary and secondary school students and over 100,000 college and university students in Gaza have no access to education. The IDF has damaged or destroyed 9 out of every 10 schools, at least 65 of which were UNRWA-run facilities, sheltering thousands of displaced civilians. Between October 2023 and January this year, the IDF bombed all the universities in Gaza. Consequently, Gaza's treasured intellectual landmarks, including the Islamic University of Gaza, the North Gaza and Tubas branches of Al-Quds University, and Palestine Technical University have all been destroyed. Another 195 heritage sites, 227 mosques, and 3 churches have also been damaged or destroyed, including the Central Archives of Gaza, containing 150 years of history, all gone. Isra University, the last remaining university, was demolished by the military of Israel on January 17 this year.
Now, Minister Naledi Pandor'S speech is a beacon of hope and a testament to the power of solidarity and justice. Her words resonate deeply as she shines a light on the stark hypocrisy and double standards that plague the international community's response to the Palestinian struggle. The truth hurts, and Minister Pandor'S speech is a stark reminder of the world's selective outrage and complicity in the face of Israeli aggression. The contrast between the swift action taken against Putin and the inaction on Netanyahu and his ministers is a damning indictment of the international community's bias and lack of political will. The criminalization of peaceful protests and the silencing of media outlets like Al Jazeera are chilling reminders indicators of the erosion of democratic values and the suppression of dissenting voices. The parallels with South Africa's own struggle against apartheid are poignant, highlighting the long-standing relationship between the people of Palestine and the anti-apartheid movement. Minister Pandor'S speech is a call to action, a reminder that justice and accountability are not optional, but essential. It is a testament to the power of solidarity and the importance of standing with the oppressed, even in the face of overwhelming power and influence. In a world where might often makes right, Minister Pandor'S speech is a breath of fresh air, a reminder that there are still voices that refuse to be silenced, that refuse to compromise on the principles of justice and humanity. Her words are a beacon of hope, inspiring us to stand tall and demand a better world, where the rule of law and human rights are not mere slogans, but a reality for all. Conversations on social media, news, media coverage, events on college campuses, and general public discourse related to the Israel-Hamas war demonstrate a dire need for accurate information about Israel, Zionism, and the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict. As the war continues to evolve, staying well informed about the historical context and ongoing developments is crucial for fostering more understanding and informed opinions. Now, in 1897, the Zionist movement, founded by Theodor Herzl and other leaders, advocated for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Widespread anti-Semitism and persecution of Jewish communities in Europe in the late 19th and early 20th centuries served as a major catalyst for the Zionist movement. Jews faced discrimination, violence, and pogroms, a violent organized riot or attack directed at Jews in many parts of Europe, which fueled the desire for a safe and secure homeland. The first Zionist Congress was held in 1897 in Switzerland, where Herzl and other prominent figures in the Zionist movement discussed and debated their vision for the establishment of a Jewish state. Now, why does this matter? The Zionist movement under Theodor Herzl was historically significant because it marked the birth of modern political Zionism. Herzl advocated for a Jewish homeland, organized the first Zionist Congress, and played a central role in shaping the intellectual and political foundations of the movement. His vision influenced Jewish identity and led to diplomatic efforts that eventually contributed to the establishment of the State of Israel. Herzl's legacy as a visionary and advocate for Jewish self-determination remains a fundamental part of Israel's history and ideology. Then came the Balfour Declaration 1917. The Balfour Declaration was a letter from British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Lord Walter Rothschild, expressing British support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. Why does this matter? It was the first recognition by a major international power of Jewish national aspirations, which had a profound impact on international diplomacy, contributed to the end of Ottoman rule in the region, and shaped the Israeli-Palestinian conflict by laying the groundwork for competing national claims in Palestine. It remains a pivotal historical document in the context of the region's complex history and ongoing discussions about its future. 1920, the League of Nations mandate. Now, the League of Nations granted Britain the mandate to administer Palestine following the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire at the end of World War I. The mandate included a commitment to implementing the Balfour Declaration and facilitating Jewish immigration and settlement in Palestine. The mandate led to nearly 30 years of British control over the region, ending in 1948. Now, as Minister Naledi Pandor'S so eloquently pointed out, the struggle for Palestinian justice and freedom is not a new phenomenon. The roots of this conflict can be traced back to the early 20th century, with key events like the Balfour Declaration in 1917 and the British Mandate for Palestine in 1920. But the story doesn't end there. Fast forward to the present day and we see that the conflict has only intensified. The establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, the Six-Day War in 1967, the Intifadas, the Gaza wars, the list goes on. And yet, despite the passing of decades, the fundamental issues remain unresolved. Now, as Minister Pandor highlighted, the international community's response to this conflict has been woefully inadequate. The double standards and hypocrisy she spoke of are evident in the lack of meaningful action to hold Israel accountable for its actions. In 2023, the war was still raging on. The occupation continues, settlements expand, and Palestinian lives are lost. The world's inaction has emboldened Israel to pursue its agenda with impunity. The Palestinian struggle is not just a political issue, but a human rights crisis. The world's silence and inaction have allowed Israel to perpetuate a system of oppression, displacement, and violence against the Palestinian people. Minister Pandor's speech is a powerful reminder that the international international community has a moral and legal obligation to act. The ICC's jurisdiction over the situation in Palestine is a crucial step towards accountability, and the world must support and cooperate with these efforts. Now, the parallels with South Africa's own struggle against apartheid are stark. The world's silence and complicity allowed apartheid to persist for far too long, and it is crucial that we learn from this dark history. The criminalization of peaceful protests and the silencing of media outlets like Al Jazeera are chilling reminders of the erosion of democratic values and the suppression of dissenting voices. The world must stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people and demand an end to these abuses. Minister Pandor's speech is a call to action, a reminder that justice and accountability are not optional, but essential. It is time for the world to take a stand and demand a just and lasting resolution to the Palestinian question. The people of Palestine deserve nothing less. Minister Naledi Pandor's powerful speech is a clarion call to action. The struggle for Palestinian justice and freedom is not a distant memory, but a living, breathing reality that demands people's attention and solidarity. The silence and complicity have allowed Israel to perpetuate a system of oppression, displacement, and violence against the Palestinian people. We have finally come to the end of the video. What do you, my viewers, have to say? Share your thoughts as well in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and see you in my next video as I bring you another interesting video.